In 6 seconds, everything changed. Los Angeles International Airport. Terminal 3. May 1973. The security checkpoint was unremarkable. Standard metal desk, tired officer in a short-sleeved uniform, the usual crowd of travelers shuffling through with boarding passes and impatience. Morning rush. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. The PA system announcing departures in that flat, mechanical voice airports perfected decades ago. Bruce Lee stood at the checkpoint wearing a simple dark turtleneck and slacks. No entourage. No cameras. Just a man trying to catch a flight to Hong Kong. The security officer, a thick-necked man in his 40s named Gerald Morrison, looked at Bruce's passport, then up at his face, then back at the passport. His expression shifted. Recognition mixed with something else. Skepticism, maybe? Or opportunity. Bruce Lee, Morrison said loudly. Too loudly. Heads turned in the terminal. The movie star. Bruce nodded once. Polite. Neutral. Morrison flipped through the passport slowly, deliberately making other travelers wait. Says here you were born in San Francisco, but you're traveling on a Hong Kong document. That right? Yes. Why Hong Kong? I work there. Morrison leaned back, arms crossed. Work. Right. Making those. He waved his hand dismissively. Those kung fu movies. Bruce said nothing. His posture hadn't changed. Feet shoulder-width apart. Hands relaxed at his sides. Breathing steady. You know, Morrison continued, his voice carrying across the terminal now. My cousin does karate. Real martial arts. Not that movie stuff. Says most of what you guys do is fake. Wires and camera tricks. The line behind Bruce was growing. Other travelers exchanged glances. A few recognized Bruce and began whispering. Bruce's expression didn't change. May I have my passport back, please? Morrison held it just out of reach. I'm asking you questions. Standard security procedure. You got a problem with that? Airport security questioned Bruce Lee. In 6 seconds everything changed, and the moment the supervisor had to intervene would never be forgotten. What happened in those 6 seconds would be retold in airport break rooms for decades. But to understand it, you need to understand who Bruce Lee was in May 1973. He wasn't yet the global icon. Enter the Dragon hadn't been released. It was still in post-production. To most Americans, Bruce was that Chinese guy from the Green Hornet, or the martial arts actor making movies in Hong Kong. Recognition without respect. Fame without authority. Bruce had been dealing with this his entire career. The dismissal. The assumption that what he did was performance rather than discipline. The casual racism disguised as skepticism. He'd learned early that arguing accomplished nothing. That raising his voice only confirmed their suspicions. That the only response to doubt was demonstration. But demonstration required invitation. And Bruce Lee never imposed. That was the code he lived by. Never use your skill to prove yourself. Only to protect, to teach, or when explicitly challenged with consent. Gerald Morrison wasn't challenging him. He was simply being petty. Flexing his small authority over someone he decided didn't deserve respect. So Bruce waited. Second one. Morrison held the passport higher, just out of comfortable reach. I asked you a question? Is it real? The fighting in your movies? Second two. Bruce's eyes stayed locked on Morrison's face. Not aggressive. Not submissive. Just present. Completely present. The kind of eye contact that makes people realize they're being truly seen, perhaps for the first time. Second three. Morrison's smirk faltered slightly. Something in Bruce's stillness was beginning to register. The terminal noise seemed to fade. Other travelers had stopped moving, sensing something. Second four. Sir, Bruce said quietly, his voice carrying perfect courtesy and zero warmth. I would like my passport. I have a flight. Second five. Morrison's hand wavered. He was still holding the passport up. but his arm was beginning to feel heavy. Bruce hadn't moved. Hadn't threatened. Hadn't even raised his voice. But the air between them had changed density. Second 6. Morrison looked into Bruce Lee's eyes and understood, with sudden crystalline clarity, that he had made a terrible mistake. Bruce didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. What Morrison saw in those eyes wasn't anger. It was capacity. The unmistakable recognition that the man standing in front of him could end this confrontation in ways Morrison's imagination couldn't begin to process, and had chosen, with conscious effort, not to. It was the difference between a locked door and an open door you choose not to walk through. Morrison had been treating Bruce like a locked door. Suddenly he understood he was standing in front of an open door with something vast and dark on the other side, and the only reason he wasn't being pulled through was Bruce's active decision to hold still. Morrison's walkie-talkie slipped from his other hand and clattered on the desk. That's when Supervisor Richard Chen came running. Chen had been watching from the office 20 feet away. He'd seen Morrison pull his usual routine, the petty power play he did with celebrities and foreigners, the little humiliations he inflicted because he could. Chen had started walking over to intervene when he saw Morrison hold the passport out of reach. But then he'd seen Bruce's face. And he'd started running. "Morrison!" Chen's voice cut across the terminal. "Morrison, give the man his passport. Now." Morrison jerked like he'd been slapped. He practically threw the passport at Bruce, who caught it calmly with one hand. Chen reached the desk breathing hard. He was Chinese-American, second generation, and he knew exactly who Bruce Lee was. More importantly, he knew what Bruce Lee represented, not just to the Chinese community, but to anyone who'd ever been dismissed because of their face or their accent or their name. "Mr. Lee," Chen said, his voice formal with respect. "I apologize for the delay. You're cleared. Your flight boards in 20 minutes, gate 47. Bruce nodded once. "Thank you." He picked up his carry-on bag, a simple canvas duffel, and walked toward the gates. He didn't look back at Morrison. Didn't acknowledge the other travelers now openly staring. Just walked with that distinctive smooth gait, unhurried, centered. Morrison stood behind the desk, face flushed, hands shaking slightly. Chen didn't yell. Didn't make a scene. Just said quietly, "My office. Now. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding." What happened in Chen's office stayed private, but Morrison never worked airport security again. The official record said, resigned for personal reasons. People who were there that day knew better. But the story didn't end at the security checkpoint. Bruce's flight to Hong Kong was delayed, mechanical issue, 2-hour wait. He spent it in the terminal restaurant, drinking tea, reading a script. Alone. 40 minutes into the wait, Richard Chen appeared at his table. Out of uniform now, wearing a simple polo shirt. "Mr. Lee," Chen said, "I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to apologize again. Officially and personally." Bruce gestured to the empty seat. Chen sat. "Morrison's been a problem for months," Chen said. "Complaints from passengers. Nothing we could make stick officially. He knows the rules. Stays just inside them. Uses his position to diminish people." "Why me?" Bruce asked. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Because you're visible. Because you're successful. Because you represent something he can't understand and that threatens him." He paused. "And because he thought you wouldn't fight back." "I didn't." "No," Chen agreed. "You didn't. But he saw what you could have done. We all did." Bruce sipped his tea. "That's not power. That's just restraint." "Maybe," Chen said. "But restraint is the hardest technique to master, isn't it?" For the first time since entering the terminal, Bruce smiled. "You study?" "Wing Chun. 6 years. I'm terrible at it." Chen laughed. "But I know enough to recognize." He gestured at Bruce, searching for words. to recognize the difference between someone who knows forms and someone who lives the principle. They talked for 90 minutes. About martial arts, about philosophy, about the difference between technique and understanding. About what it meant to carry skill you hoped never to use. About the responsibility that came with capability. When Bruce's flight was finally called, Chen walked him to the gate. "That thing Morrison did," Chen said as they reached the boarding door. "Holding your passport out of reach. If you'd wanted to, if you'd decided to take it from him." He trailed off. Bruce looked at him. 6 seconds, he said quietly. That's how long it took for him to understand. Second 1 through 3, he was still playing his game. Second 4 through 6, he saw the reality. If I'd moved, any movement at all, it would have erased those 6 seconds. He needed to see it himself. That's the only way people learn. Chen nodded slowly. The best technique is the one you don't use. The best technique, Bruce corrected gently, is the one you use perfectly. Even when that technique is stillness. Away from the cameras, Bruce made a choice no one expected. The Hong Kong flight was nearly empty, midweek, mid-morning. Bruce sat and coached by the window. A young Chinese-American man in his 20s sat 3 rows back, working up courage. Finally, as the plane reached cruising altitude, he approached. "Mr. Lee? I'm sorry to bother you. I was in the terminal. I saw what happened at security." Bruce looked up from his book. Waited. "The way you handled that officer. The way you just stood there. I've been studying Taekwondo for 5 years and I don't think I could have done that. I would have argued. Gotten angry. Maybe worse. What's your name?" "David. David Wong." "Sit, David." Bruce gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Tell me why you study." They talked for an hour. Bruce asked more questions than he answered. "Why do you train? What are you trying to prove? Who are you trying to become?" When David mentioned wanting to win fights, Bruce stopped him. "If you train to win fights, you'll always be looking for fights to win. The opponent becomes the purpose. But the opponent is temporary. They'll win sometimes, you'll win sometimes, eventually age wins every time." Bruce leaned back. "Train to understand yourself. The opponent is just a mirror that shows you what you haven't mastered yet. Is that what happened with the security officer? He was your mirror?" Bruce considered this. No. He was afraid. Fear makes people cruel in small ways. I didn't need to mirror that. I needed to give him 6 seconds to see what he was doing. The 6 seconds everyone's talking about. People will talk about the 6 seconds, Bruce said. But the important part was the 700 seconds I spent before arriving at the airport, training my breathing. The discipline isn't in the moment of confrontation. It's in the 10,000 moments before, training yourself to be calm when calm is difficult. David pulled out a business card, his own card, from some entry-level job, and asked Bruce to sign it. Bruce wrote instead, "Absorb what is useful. Reject what is useless. Add what is specifically your own." BL, 35,000 feet, May 73-inch. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. 2 weeks later, Richard Chen received a package at his office. Inside, a handwritten note and a small gift. The note read, "Richard, true authority requires no uniform. Thank you for understanding the 6 seconds. Teach others. Bruce." The gift was a small wooden plaque with a single character carved into it, stillness. Chen mounted it in his office. For the next 20 years, every security officer he trained heard the story. Not as the time Bruce Lee almost fought someone, but as the time Bruce Lee showed perfect control. David Wong kept that signed business card in his wallet until 2018. He became a martial arts instructor in San Francisco. His first lesson to every new student: the fight you avoid is the fight you've already won. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Morrison left Los Angeles 3 months later. No one knows where he went. But people who worked that terminal never forgot the look on his face at second 6. The moment he understood that respect isn't demanded, it's recognized. The 6 seconds became legend. But Bruce Lee never spoke about it publicly. When asked about the airport incident, in a 1973 interview he simply said, "A man held my passport. I waited. He gave it back. That's the whole story. That's the whole story. And everything."